Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's John McMullen, the number one Eagles beat reporter in town. And we're joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Doing all right, fellas. We got the de facto NFC East Championship game, kind of, sort of.
Not quite. I mean, Washington's gotta win.
Well, if they win all three and you lose all three, they win.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. The Eagles are going to win the NFC East. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, though. If you're Washington,
That's true. And the Eagles can also clinch at least the number 2 seed if they win at Washington. But Mike, you see this up close each and every week, and last week it's, oh my God, what's going on? It barely beat the Carolina Panthers. This week it's like this team's unbeatable. Why? How do you explain the bipolar nature of the NFL?
Well, I don't know if this is a genesis of our conversation yesterday, where I say to you, fans invest 4 hours on that Sunday to watch that game. And when they're watching it, the expectation is your very best in a victory. While in the same breath, they will acknowledge it's a week-to-week league. You can't have it both ways. You can't acknowledge that it's a week-to-week league while also wanting your best every week. Yeah, we all want to see everybody play their best, but you just can't. So there are weeks where these guys, while they are professionals, they are human. We all are professionals in whatever job you have. You're a professional at that job. You probably have days where you're not giving it your best or that your mind is elsewhere.
Not me, 1,000% every day.
But that creeps in for these guys. We never take into account. We talk about this, in baseball a lot, because of the mental nature of when you're up to bat and you're thinking, oh, my girlfriend's, nagging me that I didn't empty the dishwasher and stuff like that we don't take into account that their wives and girlfriends bother them.
That's terribly specific, Mike. I think he got yelled at for not emptying the dishwasher.
Well, if I'm the one who's in charge of the dishwasher in this house, and when the light's on, the green light's on, and it's not empty, I get the look. You know what I mean? So we all take for granted that these guys have these lives that are so regimen and instrumental to the way they want it. They have things that probably bother them that cause them not to be at their best every weekend. Look, I've never been someone who judges the aesthetics of a victory in the NFL based on what we now know is such a week-to-week nature and the parity in this league, and that any week, the difference between the best team in the league's roster and the 32nd's roster is very small. Generally, the difference is the quarterback brings one team up and the other team down. The other parts in the middle are pretty similar for all these teams in the league, which is why a team can knock you off at any time. So the Eagles sometimes play down to teams, and I think the judgment is when they've played teams that are deemed to be better teams, they have been able to rise the level up and then not only beat those teams, but dominate Baltimore, dominate Pittsburgh. Yeah, they had trouble with Jacksonville and Carolina, but you can't expect them to be their best in every single game. But if you can find a way to pull out those games. See, the difference was last year, they were beating the good teams. They beat Buffalo. They beat Kansas City. They beat Dallas. They lost to some terrible teams at the end of the year. Arizona, the Giants. I mean, that was the perplexing part about all this. But this year, they're beating those good teams, and they're beating the bad teams, but not very well, but then bouncing back from it. So I think it's a team that is very focused on a big picture here that you're starting to see week to week, that they have the big picture in mind, even when they're not playing their best.
Shady McCoy, Eagle legend yesterday, Mike, called it the best Eagles team of all time. Now, I think what you just said is correct. You got to show up each and every week. But when this team is on their A game, Mike, how do they stack up for you in that? Is that a crazy comment to you? Are they up there? Like, how do you view it? You've obviously been watching this team for a long time.
Well, we've started to bring the conversation in on my show about this defense versus John Gannon's defense that went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And I said the big difference on that team is they had a Hassan Reddick. This team does not have that level of pass rusher. The rest of the defense is comparable. Do you like TJ Edwards that year better or Zach Bond? Do you like Kaiser White better than Nakobe Dean? Quinyon Mitchell? James Bradbury that year was a second-team all-pro level player. Cooper DeJean is probably better than Avonte Maddox. I think that version of Chauncey Gardner is probably better than this version of Chauncey Gardner. That team had Marcus Epps. I think Blankenship maybe a little bit better than what Epps was. That version of Slay probably better than this version of Slay. I think the big difference is Vic Fangio, the designer of this defense, has a better knack of when to dial something different up, when to do something, show a little something different. I think John Gannon's big problem was he stuck to his guns and wasn't really willing to get out of what he did, where Fangio will change it up. And has just a couple extra tweaks and little things that Gannon didn't have. So personnel-wise, I think they're pretty similar. I think Fangio puts them over the top. The team that won the Super Bowl in 2017, you got to imagine that this defense is probably better than that defense.
Oh, yeah.
They were good in the secondary. They had Malcolm. They weren't great in the secondary. This team is borderline great in the secondary right now. And then offensively, talent-wise, I don't know that there's a team that rivals this. I mean, even the TO team, I'm not sure that offensively, other than TO, that they had anywhere near Devontae Smith or Saquon Barkley on that roster. So offensively, talent-wise, might be the best team they've ever had. And defensively, going up against their Super Bowl appearances, man, it's tough. You might be right that this talent-wise might be the best 53 they have.
Offensively, you're right. The parts are better than they've ever been. Ray Diddy will go back to 1949 and 1950,
yeah,
but I'm not going to do that.
There, John.
I'm not going to.
My hair's getting gray. Yeah. Somebody commented I had too much gray in my beard last week. Someone texted me. But I'm not on the 49 team. Not the 60 teams either.
I agree.
The 80 team.
I'm just talking about the modern NFL, and this team's in the conversation to be the best Eagles team. But offensively, I think what you said is right. The parts are better than they've ever been. The sum, however, is not. It's not even close to being the best of recent years. Now they improved against Pittsburgh, although, you can go the other direction, the passing game up, the running game down, running game up, passing game down. The sum of those parts has not been what people expected.
Definitely not. I remember having the conversation back in August and saying, look, there's no reason. And I don't want to say 30 points a game because that's a tough number to average, but like 29.8 points a game was kind of a number for me that like this team, there's, when you see them play the way they did against Pittsburgh, that's where you're like, well, what do you do? How do you stop them? They could have run the ball more against Pittsburgh and probably have more yards if they chose to. And Pittsburgh's the best rush defense in the league. So what are teams that aren't as good as Pittsburgh going to do? They ran the ball, 42 times in the game? I think we fail to kind of recognize they ran the ball 42 times in the game. They threw it 32. So they did run the ball more. Now, some of those are Hurts's runs, but still, they probably could have been even more effective in the run game if they chose to. That's just where you're dangerous, where you say if they chose to. In other words, they could do whatever they want if they want to. That's where you thought this offense could be, because the defensive coordinator would be having cold sweats at night trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with A.J. Brown? What am I going to do with Devontae Smith? Wait a second. They still have Saquon Barkley you got to account for, and then there's Hurts. That's what the thought was early in August. And as the season went on, you're thinking, yeah, they're winning, and it's fun, and they got this running game, and Philly fans love to run the ball, but you got two guys that are being left out here. And Hopefully this continues to evolve over these next 3 weeks to where now you get to the playoffs and teams are saying they haven't done this all season. They're just starting to do this now. We got to figure it out. And that would be optimal. In the words of Gabe Kapler, sorry to throw a Gabe Kaplerism on a Wednesday.
Optimal. I like it. Yeah, I mean, I would try to stop the run. I want to see somebody. Maybe you're never going to see it. And I don't know, because yet you need good corners. And I'm thinking about, and that's why I look at Green Bay. To me, the most dangerous team now that Detroit is decimated by injury. Detroit would have been clearly the best team the Eagles would have had to gone through. But I no longer think that's the case because of injury. Green Bay has shifted to me being the most difficult. Because they can win a shootout, number one, so they can give up some points, but they have a very good defense. When Jair Alexander's out there, they have good corners and they have a really good cover corner. And to me, if I'm playing defense against the Eagles, I'm loading the box to stop Saquon as much as possible, keep him to that 80 to 100 range, and forcing them to throw the football. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying that's easy. But if you have corners that can at least make it difficult and make those windows tighter, and I think Green Bay does, then if the Eagles have a bad afternoon, they could be in trouble.
If they have a bad afternoon, right. But, they've already played one time, and Philly had maybe their best offensive showing of the year against Green Bay. And listen, it's one of those things. If it's all working and their offense, their passing game is going the way that it went on Sunday, where it's quick, decisive, get the ball out, let AJ, Devontae catch, get yak yards after, then the question becomes, do you want a death by 1,000 cuts and just let Barkley kind of plod his way up the field until he busts one open on you? Or do you want to give up the big play? Yeah, you might tackle AJ for 7. You might tackle him for 9. But he's going to bust out of a tackle as well. So it's pick your poison. Same with Devontae. Devontae is a pretty physical receiver that guy is so tiny.
He's very
and he'll lower the shoulder and just run right through you. He finishes off his runs when he catches these balls. But, it's that's why that slant play and those short plays for me is something that they need to continue to do more of, because those guys are so hard to tackle in the open field. And if you let them catch the ball one-on-one, you're getting 5, 7, 9, 11. You saw the one drive, they're getting 20 because you just can't figure out how you press them, do you lay off? It's just so tough. So that's what we anticipated all season long. We finally got a little taste of it.
Mike, did they answer the question, man? Coming in the last, feels like a week ago is now a year ago after the Eagles' performance this week. But a lot of questions about that passing game. They got it going in Week 15 versus Steelers. How much concern did they alleviate for you? Is it still out there? What's your thoughts on the passing game after that?
Well, the question was, and I think Dan Orlovsky brought this up, was there's a difference between being bad and having a bad game. And I think Jalen Hurts just had a really bad Sunday. I never questioned whether he could. We've seen him do it. The question is, why was he not? Why was there plays that we've seen him make? Why was he not making them? Is it just, hey, I just had a bad weekend. I had a bad Sunday. I mean, look, there have been other games where he's missed throws, not as consistently as he did that one week. So the passing game for 1 week, looked fluid. It looked great. But why was it not like that the week before or other weeks? Why are they not choosing to use Jalen in that role? Well, it's because we have this great running game. Well, why don't you want both? We've said before, John, Detroit can throw, but they can also run. Minnesota can throw, but they can also run. And for about 14 games this year, Philadelphia was essentially just choosing to run and not to show the pass. Do I think Hurts can do it? Sure. We've seen him do it at the highest level. He did it in the Super Bowl. He's done it in plenty of games. We talked about last year when they went on that losing streak. A lot of that losing streak was because their defense was so bad. Hurts had some games where he threw for 300 yards in that losing streak, and they just could not stop anybody. And ultimately he got lumped in with the whole thing too, which he should have, by the way. But yes, I think Hurts, if asked, if they have a game plan similar to Pittsburgh, these short, quick things, let him get the ball out. This is the thing. Let your other guys make the plays. Hurts doesn't need to be the guy that makes the perfect throw. Just throw it to those guys and let them make the plays. And I think that's where this offense works the best. So can they do it? Absolutely. And they're going to have to. There's going to be a game when you get to the playoffs, and if you're the number 2 seed and you have to win 4 games, one of those games is going to have to be a game where you throw for 300 yards to win that game.
And he might need a kick. Typically, that would not be an issue with the Philadelphia Eagles this year. Now, Jake Elliott got a couple field goal tries against Pittsburgh, under 50 yards. Did that stem any of your caution with Jake Elliott?
Yes and no. I mean, the whole kicking thing has gone wild. It feels like it's everybody, right? I mean, the whole league feels like there's kicks missed everywhere now, where it felt
early in the season.
Early in the season, it felt like they were hitting everything. You want a 60-yarder? Yeah, no problem. Bang, a 60-yarder. It was almost like, in every sport, everything's evolving, and the kickers are now saying 50-yarders are nothing for us. Right. And then all of a sudden, it just went wacky the other way. You see guys hitting the uprights on the extra points all the time. I mean, I think Jake Elliott, you see that he still has the ability to, the distance is not the problem. It's been, that he's been off much like a lot of these guys. They're not coming up short. But that is going to be a big thing, is if these are 41-yarders, these are shorter kicks, and he banged them right down the middle. Good to see that he's hitting them square right down the middle. But I guess the bigger question will be a 52, 53, 54-yarder. What is Nick Sirianni going to do? Is he going to send his kicker out there? Does he trust that kicker? And that is now maybe the next big question moving forward, is, hey, Nick, are you going to coach these games differently with Nick's, Jake's struggles? If you use analytics, you would say the analytics say, do not try a 50-yarder with this guy, right? Yeah. The analytics say he hasn't made one, so why would I try one? But I don't think they're going to completely get away from that. But the moment he misses that 52-yarder in a the second quarter of a game, does that change the dynamics of the way they coach these games moving forward?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, because I look at Mike Tomlin, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and I looked at him with 10.5 minutes left in the game, 4th and 7, down 2 touchdowns on the Eagles side of the field. That's not a good position to be in. You're probably not going to make it, but I would have went for it. That's your only chance to win the game. And he played it cautious, and he never got the ball back, which is the worst case scenario. And you don't see 10.5 minute drives, but guys being aggressive. And the one guy who's going to be aggressive is Dan Campbell. If that envisions itself, I think that's advantage Lions over the Eagles if Nick's going to play it more cautiously.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we saw Dan be a little reckless the other day, and that bit him. He's got an undermanned team right now. Is that changing the way that he's thinking, like, hey, we're undermanned, I got to pull it all out, to go with an onside kick at that point of the game? By the way, it's not like it's an onside kick and you're surprising everybody. You have to tell them you're going to try an onside kick.
Yeah, onside kick is desperation. I'm just talking in general, but and you don't want to be in that position where you're even contemplating an onside kick. And I'm with you. I hate the rule, but
yeah, they got to do something about that. You can't. It's ridiculous that you would have to tell the other team, hey, by the way, we're going to try to sneak one here. Be ready for it. I mean, what is the purpose of that?
But with the new kickoff rule, is there any way around it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't get around it because everybody's lined up on the other end of the field. The kicker's way back. You have to do it that way. They have to tweak that rule. And the dynamic kickoff rule has not worked.
No, it's not. I wonder if they're going to go back.
I hope.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. Like the fact that these teams are just willing to say, you know what, take the ball at the 30-yard line. I mean, you remember when they used to start at the 20. You used to have to go 80 yards. So think about that. I mean, when you think about, so I was thinking about this the other day. Saquon Barkley is going for the rushing record, and people are saying he's doing it in 17 games. That changed things. he's also got 10 yards almost every single time cut off of his ability to get yards. You start at the 30 instead of the 20. You only have to go 70 yards instead of 80 yards. So all of these guys' stats are getting cut into a little bit, because of the fact that there's 10 less yards when they start their drives almost every single time. And I really thought that putting the ball at the 30 would deter some of these teams from kicking it straight into the end zone, but they seemingly don't care. But I would much rather have them try to catch the ball at the goal line, bring it out, and get stopped. I mean, generally, when these guys are returning these kicks, they're not getting past the 25-yard line a lot of times.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, most teams have defaulted. Remember, when they were trying to get that rule passed, originally it was going to come out to the 35. And teams said, that's too much. We're not going to pass this rule if you penalize that to this degree. So they actually had to move it back to the 30. And then teams were like, all right, we'll give it a shot. And my summation early on was most teams are just going to kick touchbacks anyway. Still.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that. I actually thought teams were going to try to be a little strategic and get it into that box and make you try to bring it out. Although I guess, hey, we don't want them to bust a long one. Everybody likes, we were laughing yesterday on my show was Billy Davis and the vaunted X plays that they used to give up every single week.
Yeah.
You want to eliminate the X plays. Well, I guess this is a way to try to eliminate a big X play in the return game.
Barkley, since you brought it up, people get mad at me for this, Mike, shockingly. Who gives a fuck about that record, man? This team is 12-2. If they were 7-7, if they were 8-6, I go, yeah, let's get the record. Let's do it. This team's worried about he got banged up last week.
Well, I will say, listen, I am on your side here. I don't care whether the guy has the record or not. It's not doing anything to change my life, obviously. Nothing is. If they win the Super Bowl, my bills are still coming in, and they have to be paid. That for the one day of jubilation you get, for this. Think about that. You start this journey back in August. There's that one night of euphoria, and then you go back to living your life. Exactly. If he gets this record, it is kind of neat to say, hey, the all-time leading rusher in the history of the game played for our team, but I will much rather take the euphoria of that Super Bowl than him getting that record. Like, there's people that are literally like, no, I want him to get that record, and even if he has to play in a meaningless game against the Giants in Week 18. And I'm thinking, no way do I want to get him hurt in that particular game because he needs 125 yards. Now, it is the irony of, this is where the drama comes in, is if he needs 120 yards, it's against the Giants, his former team. Maybe it's a meaningless game. Maybe it's not, because this is what it might come down to. That game might come down to I don't know, because the tiebreakers are a little weird. I think the Vikings might end up with a strength of victory tiebreaker over you.
Yeah, they will, because they're playing. If they win out, they're playing Green Bay and Detroit, who have excellent records.
So what are the chances in your mind? Yeah, if the Lions win out, they have the tiebreaker over you. And if the Vikings and the Eagles end up with the same record, they're going to end up with strength of victory because they would beaten the Lions and the Eagles. Yeah. So what are the chances in your mind that Week 18 has meaning?
Pretty good. But I'm going to throw a curveball at you. It does have meaning, and you have to scoreboard watch a little bit. They'll make sure whoever it is, Detroit, Minnesota's playing at the same time. So you can't just mail it in depending on what happens. But in the case that you brought up a good point with Saquon, his history with the Giants, counterintuitively from the Eagles standpoint, if you want to go to real high level thinking, you want Joe Shane back, don't you? You don't want to get him fired.
I think that decision is probably being made.
Yeah.
I'm like, the last thing, you're putting they might fire him anyway, but there's a lot of talk that, Pat Leonard's a good friend. A lot of talk that they're going to give him another chance. Don't you want that? And if they're saying we're going to give this guy another chance, But then Saquon breaks the record against the Giants. I'm just saying, that's another thing to throw into the interesting mix.
Well, it's all encompassing, I guess. It's do you want this story of the whole Mara on the Hard Knocks just is epic stuff.
Yeah, nobody's gonna want to go on that show ever again.
No, and like Joe Shane, I think he handled it poorly, but probably made the right decision. Mike McGarry is on my show a couple times a week, and he's the Atlantic City Press columnist who covers all the sports. But he grew up a Giants fan, and he always suggests they made the right decision. What's the Giants' record with Saquon Barkley on it right now? He's like, they probably win the same amount of games. They can't block, they can't throw, they're terrible. So they made the right decision in letting
Barkley, a little bit better. A little bit.
Yeah, sure. There's a little bit more, like right now, when you play them. Now, the quarterback situation's a total disaster with Boyle and DeVito. I mean, come on, that's not an NFL caliber player. But when you play them, okay, where's Neighbors? Okay, we got him in check. There's nobody else you have to worry about on that team. If you had Barkley there, okay, now we worry about Barkley. We can double Neighbors. They don't have anything else. So they made the right decision. They just, the way it was shown made them look so bad.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I've talked about it from day one.
Sure.
For them, they made the right decision.
But
that's a tough one to get by the optics, though, man.
Ooh,
yes,
the
sure optics are horrible. Optics mean more.
Optically, it might go down as the worst decision ever made by a team for the optics of it. Not the decision, the optics of it. Now, quite frankly, it's the only optics we have. We never get to see these behind the scenes of how these decisions go down. But that one there, if that show ever goes on again, no one will top that moment.
At Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show as well. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey. Every day, drive time 2 to 6. You can listen to him there. Does a tremendous job for local listeners. We have a lot of non-local listeners as well, but you can check out Mike on his YouTube channel, as I said. All right, alert, last one for me. We're going to the view portion of the show. Mike, Jay Glazer said that Brandon Graham and Big Dom went to visit Jalen Hurts on the bye week to get him to connect more with the team. Is that the key to it all? Boy, everybody is so obsessed. A week prior, the world was burning because Brandon said AJ and Jalen no longer get along. Now we got Jay Glazer saying Brandon went over for tea to get Jalen to connect more with his teammates. Why do people put so much substance?
My question would be, why is Jay Glazer talking about this in week 16 of the season?
Because Zander pointed out, probably he was gifted the information to spin it in a positive fashion after the week the Eagles went through, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, this came out, I guess, later yesterday. We talked about it in the 5 o'clock hour on my show. We played a little bit of the audio from Jay. It was kind of hard to hear the audio, but I mean, basically, yeah, Big Dom. I can see this whole situation. Big Dom knocks on Brandon's door. Get in. Where we go? We're taking a ride. Get in. Don't ask questions. He packs him in the car. We're at Jalen's house. What are we doing here, Dom? Don't ask questions. Just knock on the door. Do as I tell you. I mean, this whole visual is just epic right now, right? I don't know what to make of. Brandon Graham's such an interesting character in all of this, how this is playing out. Is he the guy that helped it early to get him 10 straight and then almost ripped it apart? And I mean, this could be like the Hallmark movie. It's a Hallmark Christmas.
Yeah.
How the Eagles season was saved. Forget the garbage picking field goal kicker with Tony Danza. We need the Big Dom. I know they tried the Big Dom story, but
they want to make the movie.
Did the Eagles squash that thing?
No, Dom did.
Big Dom didn't want to be in it.
Yeah, Dom's an interesting cat because he obviously he enjoys the attention at some level.
Is there another guy in his role around the league that has as much or even close to notoriety?
No way.
No.
I don't even
Does
know if
every
other
team?
I don't even know if other teams have a big Dom, do they?
Yeah, I was going to ask. Do other teams even have a big Dom?
Every team has a security guy, but not to the level of Dom.
Big Dom's more than just a security guy. He's in like every clip of the sideline.
Well, that's what I mean.
Wait, didn't he get a new? Isn't he like the assistant to Howie Roseman
he's
now?
part of the coaching staff. No, he's he's
a coach, because that means you can stay on the sideline, right?
He got the assistant job to Howie Roseman a couple years ago.
He's the assistant GM now.
He's not quite. He's a special advisor.
Next thing you know, he's the guy in charge of the transfer portal, and he's talking to those guys and getting inside information.
He is officially part of the coaching staff for what went on last year. So that's how the Eagles skated through, him being on the sidelines. He's a everybody likes him. Great dude. It's weird. He turns down interviews. He turns down, like, they want to make a movie of his life. He turns that down. But obviously, they got the shirts. Reed was wearing it. He embraces that part of it.
I'm surprised he didn't leave with the whole Kansas City crew with Andy Reid.
Well, I think he's closer to Jeffrey.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's Jeffrey's guy.
He's been here since the Reed era, 99, right? He got here in 99 with Andy.
Yeah, Butch, I forget his last name. That was long before me.
Butchie Pachanico.
He was he replaced I don't remember his last name. You're probably right. But he was kind of legendary in his own right, more of a low-key way for some of the things he was able to clean up, shall we say. And then Dom replaced him. And yeah, he's very close to Jeffrey, and that's number one, and he should be, because Jeffrey's been very, very good to him financially, shall we say. So there's a lot of loyalty there.
Yeah. There's no more Philadelphia story than a guy named Big Dom, who really has a undescribed title and role, being the reason why.
He's got a described title and role. He's got his title and role is everything, basically.
Yeah, he is the chief security officer and senior advisor to the general manager.
Yes, plus game day coaching operations now. That's what he added this year. That's the part that was
the next role for him will be the David Akers role. He goes up at the draft and makes the next selection when they let
well, he's a big part of the draft process, because he does a lot of the investigation of if the players have issues in their past and things like that. So
probably scares the shit out of them when they come in there.
Right. Yeah.
You whacked up here.
He is a big part of the organization. He really is.
It's wild. It is a pretty unbelievable story when you think about it. Now, I'm sure more low-key, under-the-radar guys exist on teams all throughout this league.
Every single team's got a director of security. Every single team. Most of them are former FBI agents, things like that. So every single team's got one of them. Here in Philadelphia, it's because of Dom and what he looks like, and
the Philadelphia, what he looks like, the whole Big Dom moniker. It just apropos and just perfect for this team. But yes, just to let the people know, he does have a pretty big role.
Yeah, he does. Mike, Super Bowl or bust, or what?
It's got to be. I mean, look,
got to be.
I think there was trepidation at the beginning of the year based on what happened last year, not based on the talent on the roster. I think those questions have been answered. I bring up, Sirianni's 46-19. He's got the top 10 winning percentage in the history of football, and yet some people have questions. I got this group of Sirianni haters that listen to my show. They text in all the time. You can't talk about his record without bringing up what happened last year. And I said, that's been addressed. They fired the offensive coordinator. They fired the defensive coordinator. They addressed what they thought the problem was. They went out and said, our defense was so bad, we need to draft not one, but two secondary players. They did address the problem that he had last year. And look, I think Nick is an interesting figure in all of this because when he was hired, nobody knew who he was. So the preconceived notion was, I don't like this guy. So it's hard to win people over when the initial reaction is, I don't like you. And he won people over a little bit because of his actions. But then when the team started losing, it was those same actions that made you turn back on him again. So he's really got no chance to win people over because he wasn't the guy you wanted. And it's hard for people to admit that they were wrong. They always want to be right. So it's just like Nick's just in different character. But I really think that Nick has done a really good job in behind the scenes and doing what he does. What does this guy do? He sits these guys in a room and says, I was watching the New York Stock Exchange last night. Did you guys watch that yet?
I didn't see it yet.
Nick watched it. He was just talking about it.
Well, there's a scene in there. Gastineau, Klecko, Marty Lyons, and Salam. They don't get along. They don't like each other at all. And Gastineau, who's just a buffoon to deal with, by the way. I mean, he just seems like a complete jackass. So Klecko and Lyons, they don't like him. The coach at the time is Walt
Coleman?
Walt Coleman, yeah. He sits the four of them down and he says, I don't care if you're friends. I don't care if you get along. But if you don't play together on Sunday, I'll cut your ass, I'll cut your ass, I'll cut your ass, I'll cut your ass. Now get out of my office. I mean, this is the role of the head coach, and I think we don't envision it like that anymore. But I think Nick, did a job behind the scenes of getting these guys, hey, we need to get on the same page here. And you saw that.
It's tough
Nick has
sledding.
easily put out every fire this year. He does deserve
it. It is tough sledding for the Nick Sirianni haters right now.
But I will say, people are so fixated. And, John, I know you love the Sean McVay-ites that are all over the league, and everybody wants to get their hands on anybody who shook hands with him. They met him at Wawa, and now he's on the coaching staff. I think I'm at a point, I don't want my head coach being inundated on what play am I calling on 2nd down and 7 at my own 27-yard line.
For 10 years, Mike.
Right.
Gill.
I don't need my coach to call the freaking plays. Let some other guy handle that. What I want my coach to do is focus on game day management and managing my 53. 2nd down and 7 on my own 27, I don't need him to be worried about what stupid play call I'm coming up with. Let a guy who that's his only job handle that job. And that's when you become a great head coach. It's where I say, this week we have a problem in the locker room. That's my role. Kellen, game plan's yours. Have a great time this week. I'll talk to you on Sunday.
Yep.
And that's where this team, I think last year he got way too involved with it because he didn't trust the guys he had there. And he had to get involved because he didn't trust those guys. I think he's gotten to a point after that bye week where, you're feeling it out. You're feeling it out. Okay, I think I trust this guy. I'm getting out of the way. I'm going to do my thing. We played 4 games. We had this bye week. Let him go. And I think it's really been something that Nick has done a good job of is getting out of the way and having that leadership role. We have the bite from Jason Kelsey. We play it often on our show where he says he is the best coach he's ever played for in situational football, holding players accountable. And there was a third one that I can't remember right now. But those two there, situational football and holding players accountable, he said, I've never played for a better coach than Nick Sirianni. That's coming from Jason Kelsey, who played for Andy Reid for,
Right.
Situational football and holding players accountable is two of the biggest things you can, put out there. And, I think that's where Nick doesn't get enough credit because we all view him as the guy who doesn't call the plays as opposed to the guy who keeps order.
Mike, you've talked to me enough over the years, and we're keeping you late. I apologize. Most overrated thing in football is offensive play calling. Not that it's not important, but for the emphasis people put on it, it's the most overrated thing in football. You can't overcome a bad left guard who's given up interior pressure right away with a play call.
I will say on that note, John, the biggest difference right now in why you should believe in Minnesota, in years past, their offensive line was a disaster. Good play call, good skill players, Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. They always had great skill players, but their line was a mess. Their line is not great, but it's not a sieve. And that's why I think I believe in them now way more than I believe in them before. So going back to play call and offensive talent, meant nothing for the Minnesota Vikings over the last couple of years with Jefferson and Cook and Cousins and that crew. But now that they have a decent, it's not a great offensive line, but it is much better.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the uphill battles you guys are fighting with the coaches. Like Andy Reid won the last 2 Super Bowls. He's a play calling head coach. He went up against Shanahan in the Super Bowl. He's a play calling head coach. McVay won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. He's a play calling. So I think I agree with you guys, but I will say that's probably the thing that's
there are certainly exceptions to guys who can do it. I will say, what was Andy's biggest bugaboo? Managing the clock, all that stuff.
He won a Super Bowl to what, his 21st or 22nd season?
I mean, we just saw a guy, Mike Tomlin's going to Hall of Fame, has won a Super Bowl. Nobody asked what Mike Tomlin does. John Harbaugh, borderline Hall of Fame coach, won a Super Bowl. Nobody asked what John Harbaugh does.
And nobody asked what those guys do. But if you watch the Hard Knocks during the week, you see how important those guys are in setting the culture, setting the game plan, setting the tone, getting the message out there during Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, getting ready for these games. And then on game day, you hire guys to do their job and say, I did my job to get us to game day. Now it's for my guys that I trust to take over and execute this plan.
Real quick, just from Zander's point, there's far more coaches that call plays, either offensive or defensive, that don't. So statistically, it's always going to be until people cross over and start to realize, hey, you know what? This is a bigger job than getting bogged down to Mike's point. You get bogged down and you make – because you're bogged down and thinking about third down on 2nd and 10, you're more apt to make mistakes while managing the game. And that's been the problem with Kyle Shanahan. I love Kyle Shanahan, but he's not a great game day coach.
No,
he's a great play schemer, great play designer, great play caller, but he gets bogged down and he makes mistakes on game day because he's obsessed with that.
True. Mike Gill, thanks for joining today, brother. We appreciate you hanging on for a little extra time for us. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, man.
All right. Next week is Christmas Day.
We're not doing a show next week.
We're not.
So it'll be a couple weeks.
So Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Merry Christmas to you,
It doesn't seem like it, but Merry Christmas, happy holidays to Mike Gill. Thanks, buddy.
All right, guys. See ya.
Good stuff from Mike Gill there on Birds 365. A little good correction there on Christmas. Christmas next week.
You don't think about it when you're bogged down. You don't think about it.
You do. You don't think about it. It's busy. You said it nicely the other day. Christmas season is my favorite holiday, but it is a busy time of the year. If you're covering football, which we do, and we have the privilege of doing, so we appreciate everybody watching today. Don't forget to hit that like button. We've been crushing it on the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. About 40% of our viewers watch, but do not subscribe. So hit that subscribe button if you're not already. We broke through 50,000 subscribers just 2 days ago on Monday. So big thanks to you guys for your subscriptions. We gave away a Jalen Hurts jersey, which I sent out to my man Rock Steady. Nice Jalen Hurts jersey on Monday. And then yesterday, we gave away, John, we gave away to Jason 18. Here's our winner right here from yesterday's giveaway. I gave away this hoodie in honor of Cilio being the Grinch during the Eagles' 10-game win streak. And you can see here is the hoodie that Jason 18 won. And it's an Eagles Grinch. And I'll be sending that out to Jason 18 today. So big shout out to Jason 18. Thanks, brother. We appreciate your support of the channel. He checks in and says, thank you, JAKIB family, for hooking me up. It's been an awesome year with you guys, so hoping we all celebrate a Super Bowl this coming year. Do you think the Eagles keep all 5 Bulldogs on second contracts?
Well, I think it's way too early, but certainly Jalen Carter would be yes. Jordan Davis is a difficult conversation. I think Nakobe Dean is a player that has earned it, but, finances come into the equation. And then it's way too early on Nolan Smith and Kaylee Ringo. But, I mean, they're all good players, and they all have a chance. Money comes into it. Finances come into it. Injuries come into it. Is Ringo going to develop? is Jordan Davis worth paying as a 2-down player? All these things factor into it. The one guy you know that's going to be around is Jalen Carter. That's one guy. That's
big contract coming for Jalen. I think
well,
there's a chance there's a chance. I mean, it's going to be hard to keep them all, but I think there's a chance Howie makes it happen. We will see, though. It should be interesting. I will say I'm impressed with them, John. I was hard on them early in their careers, and it took a couple of them a little bit of time, but they have really turned into a big part of the reason that this defense is the number one defense overall. It's impressive what they've been able to do this year.
Yeah, don't dismiss Vic in that.
Oh, no, I'm not at all. I think Vic is the reason that they maybe took such a big step forward. But you got Georgia guys basically at every level. You don't have anybody in the secondary, but you do have Keeley, who's kind of on the bench. He's been a great special teamer. But Nakobe at linebacker, and then those D linemen, man.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Nakobe, like I said. But the only reason I hesitate there's Jalen Carter plays a position where you're going to pay. You want to pay that position, and he's going to be one of the best players in the NFL, best defensive players in the NFL, as long as he keeps trending positively. Everything else, there's a but. And Nakobe, the but is nothing performance-wise this year. He's earned it, but the Eagles are the Eagles when it comes to linebacker. And do they want to pay the going rate at linebacker? I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. So there's a slight but. Nolan Smith has played 4 games, and he's done very well. He barely played as a rookie. He had his best game as a pro against the Steelers. I don't know if you heard some of Vic's comments about Nolan yesterday. I asked him the question.
I listened to it.
Was the typical Vic Fangio sort of the backhanded compliment about embracing your deficiencies? So, that one thing about Vic, he's honest to a fault. But
I think it works. I think it's resonating with this team. I really do.
All I'm saying is I'm just speaking towards the second contract part of it. That complicates things. Kaylee hasn't played, great special teams player, but you don't say, "Oh, I'm going to extend the special teams guy." He's got to perform, and improve as a cornerback. And we've talked about Jordan Davis a lot. He does his role very, very well. That role is typically not what you want out of the 13th overall pick in the draft. So how much money do you want to pay for a 2-down player, especially when you have to pay another interior defensive lineman top of the line money? When Jalen Carter's time comes for an extension, he'll probably be the highest paid defensive tackle in the history of football. That's how it works.
I think he should be. Fletcher Cox signed a 7-year deal for like $100 million back in his heyday. I think a 7-year, 150, 160 is coming for Carter.
That's just how it works. That's the cost of doing business in the NFL.
He's a beast, man.
But if you're paying him that, can you pay big money to another guy who's a 2-down player?
I think that's where the Howie magic comes in, John. Most GMs, I would say no, but Howie just has this weird ability to make everybody the highest paid player and keep them all. I mean, look at now maybe the offense, you do it on offense, so you can't do it on defense. I don't know. We'll see what Howie's able to do.
Here's what Vic said, by the way. You've got to embrace the challenges of your position. Everybody does. Where they might be a little deficient either from a size or a movement standpoint, and learn to work with it. That's the backhanded compliment. Now he said he's done that, but that's a backhanded compliment. That's not, he's the greatest thing ever compliment.
Good stuff. Jason 18, brother. I got your email, by the way. You're not very far from me. You're in the Philadelphia area, so I might, if I can coordinate with you, drive over the sweatshirt instead of spending the $10 to ship it. Either way, I'll do either one, but I'll email you.
You're going to have tea with Jason 18? That's
I don't
big.
know if we'll have tea. I'd have to do
That's
it.
big. That's big. You guys are connecting. That's big.
Yeah, we need a Jay Glazer report to come out.
Yeah.
Speaking of it, D. Hughes checks in. Top of the morning, guys. Have you all discussed the Glazer report about Dom and BG going to Jalen? D. Hughes, I brought it up, and you know what I was told by a commenter? You're turning my favorite morning show into The View, which I take as a tremendous insult. So I quickly shifted off of the Glazer report after John McMullen laughed at it, rightfully so. But we did talk about it at the top of the show, brother. Abe says Ajomo was giving Sayamalu problems. He's a sleeper. Ajomo has played well this year.
Yeah, he's been good in a limited role, pass rushing role. You know, he comes in when Jordan Davis comes out, basically, in big bat. You know, the interesting thing is he doesn't play that much because the Eagles defense doesn't play that much because they've been so good and they've been able to get off the field. But yeah, he's improved a lot. And he's a situational guy, but that's fine. You need that.
I think everybody on the defense has improved.
Yeah, you need rotational players, especially on the defensive line, and he's improved, and Vic likes him, so that's a positive.
Good stuff there, Abe. We appreciate that, brother. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. Hit that like button for me if you can, and help us keep growing here on JAKIB. So we appreciate each and every single one of you. We'll get to our commercial break now, and we'll talk to Brandon Lee Goutland coming up next here on Birds 365. This is the common joke, John. All the stuff I'm giving away, and all the people think I'm doing it for my cousins. My cousins don't support me as much as you guys. I'm not giving them shit.
Why are we not giving stuff away on this show? Why
we are. I give away a Saquon Barkley jersey every week. What are you talking about?
Almost every week, not every week.
Well, no, I did the Jalen Hurts on Cilio because we broke 50,000 subscribers during the show. So that was a special giveaway. Then I did the Grinch because he's the fucking Grinch. Cilio's the Grinch. He tells me every day how much the team sucks. We're 10 straight. I listen to Hard Knocks. Mike Tomlin's praising the Eagles to his team. This team is so good. We got to prepare the best offense, best defense. I'm like, holy shit. Mike Tomlin's telling me how good we are. So that's why. But we're going to do a lot more giveaways. So good stuff there. Looking forward to doing it all. We appreciate everybody in the chat. Hit that like button. And we'll be right back here on Birds 365. Before I get to the break, I do want to tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Go check out BetUS. Use that promo code I put on your screen, YouTube 150. It gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit. That's up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. Fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and even your own custom account manager. So big thanks to them for sponsoring the show. We'll be back in 3 minutes with BLJ on Birds 365.